Welcome to the Elk Talk Podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Presented by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
The goal is what little you and I know about elk hunting, we share with people.
I've got an elk building. It's like 120 yards away. What do I do? First off, the thought would never cross my mind when an elk's being 120 yards away to call anybody on a cell phone.
All elk?
All the time? Only elk?
Only elk.
Well, it's us having conversations, so we usually go down some rabbit holes, but
If you hunt with Corey Jacobson, you will find the landscape is full of rabbit holes. We're just going to make this up as we go.
and you look at it like, oh, that's a target-rich environment. But if you're trying to single one out, a solo target there is much easier to go into than a big group.
We record everything, so there's no BS and no lying, no faking it with us.
Did we hit the record
I thought I forgot to hit the record button. If you want to know something about elk hunting, this probably isn't the podcast to listen to. Should we give them a list of all the other podcasts where they might learn something? Corey Jacobson, have you kicked the bug yet?
I kicked it. I kicked it really hard and beat it most of the way out of my system, but I'm still a little stuffed up and a few lingering effects, but
When you and I talked a week ago and we canceled our podcast, I thought you were going to kick the bucket, not kick the bug.
no, I wasn't
What?
that bad. It was just the normal, what do you call it? The Shanghai chicken flu that you pick up
Yeah.
at the trade shows?
Yeah, I got to be careful with that, right? With COVID, because in my family, since I was a little kid, if you got some virus from the next county over, Grandpa said, "Oh, I got the Shanghai chicken flu." Well, that's what I always say. If you got some unknown thing that the doctor's never going to figure out anyhow, so along comes COVID, and
Now we got
still-
the Wuhan, what is it? The bird flu of some kind.
Yeah, so I just keep saying Shanghai chicken flu, and my wife would punch me in the shoulder so hard. She's like, "You can't say that right now." I'm like, "What did I say?" He's like, "Well, with this COVID, people are going to think you're making fun of them." I'm like, "Man, I got to live in a pretty tight box around here, man." Growing up in a little logging town, there were like no sideboards. Now-
Filter? What's a filter?
Yeah, and now I got to be this adult. This grown up stuff is overrated, man.
Yeah, there's.
So
I don't know. I'm not. I'm a little sensitive once in a while, at least to making sure we aren't offending too many people, and
yeah,
I
no,
don't think that's too offensive. So
Okay.
think
Well,
we're-
good. I got clearance from you. I'm going to go home and tell Kim, "Hey, Corey told me I can go back to saying Shanghai chicken flu now."
yeah, put that in your
But-
next marriage podcast,
Yeah.
marriage advice podcast, that you're taking advice from me and not your wife, and overruling
Yeah.
your wife with my advice. That's not something you want to follow or give advice on.
Yeah. But you whooped it. That's the good part.
Yeah, feeling better.
So we are already a week behind because of all of us traveling such crazy schedules. And then you got hammered with the bug. And so here we are today, making
Yeah.
up for lost time.
And making a long explanation and apology for why we haven't had an episode for a while. So
But we'll make it up.
that's right. We'll make it.
That's it.
What it lacks in quantity, we'll make up for in a lack of quality.
Yeah. Or we'll just make it up.
There you go.
Like, if you have a question, we'll make it up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just got done doing a series of sports shows out in the Seattle, Puyallup area, and then Portland. And yeah, I get asked these Roosevelt out questions. And I'm like, "You guys want me to make it up, or you want a real answer?" If you want a real answer, there's some guys out here with booths that I think you should go talk to.
Yeah.
I'm not your guy. But a lot of them are like, "No, make it up. Sounds better that way." So one of the seminars in each show was called Marriage 101 for the elk hunter.
I warned you about that.
I know. The really good one was in the Puyallup, Seattle area. A lot of people showed up with their significant other.
I bet
I'm
they
like,
did.
uh-oh, I better give a disclaimer here. And, I remember being 22, 23, 24 at one time. And that seminar was a good reminder of the things that'll come out of a guy who's 22, 23, somewhere in there, without a lot of consideration to the ramifications, like the long-term damage he's probably doing. Like when your wife-to-be is sitting there and you raise your hand in front of 200 people and ask, can you prove to her that combining our honeymoon with a hunting trip is a great idea, even though she doesn't like to hunt? I'm just thinking to myself, man, this guy has a long ride home.
But you went ahead and gave him some advice, right?
Oh, yeah. I said, so here's what I did. I said, all right, all you women in the room, do you think this guy is trying to be frugal, or is he too lazy where he doesn't want to have to think about what he's going to do on a honeymoon as a joint, project of pleasure or vacation? And he's just too lazy to think about it. So he's kind of replacing hunting with a honeymoon. Every woman in there raised their hand. And then
so let me get this straight. You went as a keynote presenter of a seminar on marriage advice.
Yep.
And you defaulted and asked all the women in the room to substantiate
what I said.
A claim?
Yeah.
That's cheating.
And if I would have been running, if I would have been running for president, Corey, I would have ruled the electoral map.
You would have got all the votes of those women in the room for sure.
Yep. And then some guy, I asked, all right, how many of you women were born and have a birthday near like Christmas or Easter or some other Valentine's Day? And a bunch of them raised their hand. And I said, keep your hand up if your boyfriend or husband thinks it's okay to combine those two gifts with one. And they all kept their hands up. I'm like, guys, where do we even start? If you're that ignorant about what this really represents.
I can't help you with taking off a week and going hunting.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. I hope people, I'm doing it again in Bend, Oregon. Trying to remember, I think it's that Friday, whatever the Friday is of that show. But it's always funny. And here's the other part. Most of the real questions come after the seminar. Everyone waits out in the hallway. And then they really corner you with some
they don't want to ask you
stuff.
In public, yeah.
No, So anyhow, I don't know if the elk hunting permission slips grew or shrunk in the Puyallup area that weekend or in Portland 2 weeks ago, but I did my best.
Did anybody record it?
I saw a lot of cameras going on.
Yeah, but you aren't worried about anything making it back to your wife?
No.
Okay.
She's heard all that stuff before anyhow. Like someone was asking me, they're like, well, what do you do to make sure your wife's happy? I'm like, well, I got to go see Carrie Underwood on March 6th. And it's not that have anything wrong with Carrie Underwood or, don't want to go, but it's in Vegas. And I would rather go and sleep in the gutters of New Delhi, India, than to go to Vegas.
No.
But that's where Carrie Underwood's playing. And my wife and one of her great friends share the same birthday. And when somehow I spoke up that, I can probably get us good tickets to Carrie Underwood because my buddy Ed is in her band and all this, it's like, guess what, Randy? You stuck your head in the noose there, pal. So I'm going there. It's going to cost a lot of money for airline and rooms and everything, but I'm smiling the whole time. I might even try to sing along until she tells me to shut up because I can't sing very good. So,
if you know words of many Carrie Underwood songs, I would be, I don't know if I'd be impressed or disappointed, but I would be surprised.
Yeah. She better sing something old gospel song or something if I'm going to know any lyrics to it. So.
Well, that's fun. Good for you.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's what I've been doing. I've been on the trade show circuit for most of the year, and I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I got 3 more to do. And then all the problems of the world are solved. We don't
That's
need an
right.
election this year. We can just send everybody home.
I don't know if we're going to get an election anyway. That's the way it's going.
Oh, we better stay on the plank, Corey.
I know.
Both of us would have a tendency to fall off the plank, and then
the good news is by saying that we could play both sides of the plank there for sure. Because there's
that's the one thing we know when we've got off the plank a little bit, because the number of emails ramps up significantly.
Yeah, we can't use the word liberal anymore in this podcast, even if we're using it in the true definition of just meaning not
like generous.
Yeah, exactly.
You put a liberal amount of jelly on my peanut butter sandwich.
Now you guys you're dividing us.
Yeah.
And
when I say, I'm pretty conservative with my money, then I got the other side mad at me. And can't win anymore.
Well, the good news is it is legislative season, and there's some political things that are taking place, but we don't have to choose sides or be partisan in anything. No. It's these are issues that affect hunters, and we should all be aware of them. And
I see that Idaho and Wyoming, your legislators are flexing their muscles to make sure that the world knows that when these legislators got elected, they all got their honorary PhD in wildlife management.
Isn't that the way it's supposed to be done? We shouldn't use biology. We should just go straight to the guy that's got influence and have him change the laws for us.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I see you guys have a bill in Idaho to possibly fix the non-resident fiasco of December 1st every year.
Yeah.
Where we all line up in a line of 60,000 people.
And, virtually or in person.
Yeah. And then your system crashes, and then everyone has to hold their place in line. There's actually a bill that says starting in 2025, that would go online and it would become a draw.
Yeah, and that's, and I've said that since the very first year that we had the debacle where everything crashed and people didn't get tags and, all the non-resident space. I mean, it's a debacle. There's no other way to describe it. And it's gone on now for, I think, 3 years. And I've said every year that they're going to go to a draw. There's no way to resolve this other than going to a draw. And now they've introduced into legislation the bill that would take it for all non-resident deer, elk, and I believe antelope, pronghorn antelope tags for all non-residents would be 100% in the draw. No over-the-counter opportunities, no standing in line, no shortcuts, nothing you've got to put in. And again, now this is going to open the discussion for, we need a point system. If we're going to a draw for non-residents, we need a point system. And hopefully we've done enough to educate people that that's not the answer. Let's not go down that slope, because we can't climb back up it once we go down it.
No. Here's what I've started saying. I've really been drawn into a lot of these discussions in the last couple months. And people want to get in arguments about all this stuff. And I'm like, well, has fighting over lighted knocks ever put one more elk on the mountain? Has fighting over these elaborate point schemes ever added one more mule deer buck? And everyone's like, well, no. Well, why are we fighting about it then? Because right now our biggest problem is we need more critters out there in the landscape. So once we have critters pooping on every golf course, then we can start arguing about this other stuff. But people don't really like it when I ask them that question, because I think it might be too blunt. I don't know.
Well, and the other problem is, I mean, yes, we need more animals on the landscape. We need a bigger pie. But when you look at some of these issues, whether it's draws, points, lighted knocks, mechanical broadheads, there are ramifications that could further limit opportunity for some of these issues. And so, I mean, it's obviously the biggest issue is always going to be access and opportunity. But at the same time, and it goes back to the political landscape of most of these things that are being implemented aren't being implemented by wildlife biologists. They aren't being implemented because of science. They're being forced onto us and forced onto the wildlife managers, the agencies in the states, by a legislator.
Yeah. Well, one of those Wyoming legislators who has that honorary PhD from Drill Bit Tech, he decided to introduce a bill that if some elk eat your grass, you get compensated for 150% of the going rate.
Nice.
Yeah.
He must have a lot of grass that elk eat.
Evidently. Either that or she's that Wyoming Game and Fish has a lot of money saved for their rainy day fund, and that's eating a hole in his pocket. I don't know. But
Well, they're sitting on some of my money for the rainy day fund right now.
Yeah, mine too. Anyhow, if you live in Wyoming and you're paying attention, or you didn't know about this, I think it's either Senate bill or House Bill 60. Going to have a pretty big impact on your game and fish agency. It could cost Game and Fish up to $10 million per year under this formula. And I think everybody's on board of, hey, we don't want elk eating somebody out of house and home. But, the flip side of that is a lot of places, they don't let anyone move the elk off or go in and shoot some cows or whatever. And so, that's kind of like saying, gee, I can't believe my grass is getting this tall, but I won't let anyone mow it. So
yeah, it's Wyoming House Bill 60.
Okay.
And it is an act relating to game and fish, authorizing the Game and Fish Department to compensate landowners, lessees, and agents for extraordinary damage to rangeland as specified, providing a definition, requiring rulemaking, requiring Wyoming Game and Fish to develop an elk management plan as specified, requiring a report, providing a sunset date, and providing for effective dates.
Yeah, and then you go back and go down and read all that stuff. And I think if you can prove that you've lost 15% of your grass, they call it damage to your grassland. And if you can't prove that, there's a default clause that says, I think if for more than 2 years, elk populations are over objective by some percentage, by default, you can say the elk damaged my grassland.
Yeah.
So, and then you get paid 150%, even if it's leased land from the state. I think you and I got to get into that racket. We need to go.
Oh my goodness!
Go lease a bunch of ground from the state of Wyoming. Put 2 cows out there and say, "Damn elk ate it all." Got a compensation program going on here.
It says right here, it shall be presumed that extraordinary damage to rangeland has occurred if the population estimate of any big game herd on the rangeland for which the damage is claimed exceeds the population objective for 2 or more consecutive years.
Yeah. So how are you going to get those numbers under objective if you can't have access to take some of them out? That's really the only tool wildlife managers have is hunting. And they don't have the tool to force themselves or force hunters onto private land. Nobody's going to go for that. Nobody's going to force themselves or support a project or an effort that violates someone's property rights. So no one's going to do that.
Well, and who's going to go out and review all of these claims and say, oh, yes, it was actually a herd of antelope that came through here and ate these 4,000 acres worth of pristine grassland? When that's just, it's like a lot of the regulations. We have the new regulation for shed hunting season in southeast Idaho this year.
Really?
And
you did?
Yeah, it's implemented. There's no shed hunting in southeast Idaho until a certain date to protect the wildlife. And I am all about protecting wildlife, but you can still go out and take your binoculars and look for birds. You can still take your rifle and go out and call and shoot coyote. You can still take your snowmobile and ride it up the side of the mountain back and forth, but you just can't pick up any sheds that are on the ground because shed hunters are harassing wildlife. So now there's a new rule out there. The problem is we already had a rule about harassing wildlife. It was, you cannot harass wildlife. And when I said, why don't we just enforce that? You know what the answer was? We don't have enough enforcement.
Well, then why do you need another law?
That was my point exactly. We're creating a law that's going to punish people who obey the law and benefit those who don't. So now overnight, a whole bunch of shed hunters became bird watchers and coyote hunters, I'm sure. And they're out there doing the same thing as before, unchecked, unregulated. And we just keep making all these rules that we don't have the enforcement to keep up with the rules we have. But let's create another one and just hope that people will manage themselves and obey it.
Yeah. Hey, did you apply in Arizona? They posted the results last week.
I heard that. I got some emails and messages from people that were successful, but no, I did not. I'm one of those point buyers.
Point buyer, huh?
I'm a point buyer.
You're waiting for the wet year with the good moon phase.
Wet year, good moon phase with the later season dates.
Okay.
On a year that I don't have anything else planned. So we may be into the 2030s before those stars align.
I didn't draw, but I drew last year, so I had 2 points, right? My loyalty point, my 100 points. So right. I didn't plan on drawing. So, but someone on our crew drew.
Yeah?
Yeah. Some unnamed person who had very low points. And everyone's like, oh, we'll just swing for the fences. We'll just swing for the fences. We're already busy this fall. And somebody drew. So,
man,
I don't know. Clean living.
Yeah, no.
I know who it is, but I don't want to rat him out.
Is it an early season, late season?
Early season.
Archery or rifle?
Rifle.
Uh-oh. So they drew that with few points. That's going to be a lot of people mad at them. Yeah.
So, but it's not one of the what I'd call premier early rifle seasons. But oh well. You know, if you got very few points and you're going to Arizona in September with a rifle in your hand, you know, that's a pretty good gig to have for September.
Yeah.
We're going to bring Donnie and Corey down there to call them in.
There are a few places I have been that rival Arizona for rutting action on a good year. They manage it for that purpose.
Yeah.
It's well managed for that purpose.
Yeah. So I didn't even swing for the fences, really. I tried for a late rifle hunt and a late archery hunt. Oh, well. I pretty much expect that, right? If you look at the big sample size of all this stuff, if you draw before you probably should have statistically, you got to count yourself lucky.
Yep.
So, you know, and that's, I get it's the time of year where everyone kind of kicks the dirt and moans about their bad luck with drawing and stuff, but I'm still happy to just go do whatever. Someone needs a camp cook. Someone needs someone to tell stories and lies in camp. I'm your man.
Man, you keep saying that, but every year when I invite you to come along and tell stories and cook for us, you make up some excuse to not be there.
I only do base camp cooking.
Oh, gotcha. So you have to be able to drive to where you're going to be cooking. Okay.
Yeah, if I'm gonna bring all my wife's pre-cooked meals, I got to be able to keep those in the cooler. I'm not hauling those into the backcountry.
It was minus 7 degrees or positive 7 degrees last year in rifle season. You wouldn't even have needed a cooler. You could have just packed them in for us.
Yeah, probably would have. New Mexico's coming up. Did you apply in New Mexico yet? The deadline's March 20th.
I'm not. We went to New Mexico this last year and had a good time, and Donnie shot a bull, but I'm going to pass.
Okay. Yeah. And then Montana is April 1st. How ironic that Montana is April Fool's Day.
Yeah, it's been that way in the past, I remember.
Yeah, it's been that way now for about 10 years. But if you're not writing all this down, folks, you ought to go hunt. And if you're an insider member, they already have all this listed and all the dates. I think they've done a strategy article or maybe just a general article about every deadline date. So
yeah, there's an article with a chart that goes through every species, every deadline for every state, and it's very comprehensive, but also very handy. Plus, if you're on their email list, you'll get emails reminding you that there's a deadline coming up.
Yeah. So I'm thinking I've worked up the gumption to try New Mexico archery again, Corey.
Really?
I haven't done it since you and I were there in 2016.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that I'm getting old.
Well, you've got to have 8 points there by now, right?
Well, I would if they had a point system.
Oh, that's right. New Mexico is one of the smart states that doesn't have a point system.
So
you can go into it having not drawn an archery elk tag in 8 years. You can still go into it with the same chance as everybody else.
Yeah, you got the same probability that I have, and I've been applying there since Moby Dick was a minnow, and I haven't drawn now for 8 years, but that's all right.
Yeah. But so are you going to put in for the same unit that you and I hunted?
Not a chance.
Yeah, good.
I'm going to drive by that. I'm just going to wave. Suckers. Let me tell you about this place. But so I probably am going to try that one. But again, I'm going to swing for the fences. Don't ask me why. I just feel like if I'm going to drive all that way, it better be one of those hunts where you slam your car door and they start bugling and walking towards you.
Yep. So your alarm goes off when you lock the keys in it, and the elk just keep bugling. I don't know if I've ever told the story about that. We were hunting Idaho a couple of years ago, and we got outside the truck, and we were standing there and let out a bugle, and a bull answered up on the mountain and stood there a little bit, and he answered again a little bit closer, and I thought, man, he's coming our way in the morning. This is good. And so we're scrambling, grabbing our backpacks and loading them with everything we need there at the truck. And I hit the lock button on my truck and put the keys in the gas tank and walk over about 40 yards and just standing there listening. Well, Donnie and John are over, and pretty soon John comes over and joins me, and Donnie's over doing something, and I let out a bugle, and the bull answers right back, and I thought, oh, this is going to happen. And about then, Donnie shuts the door on the truck, and the alarm goes off, and beep, beep, beep. And that bull didn't bugle again.
Yeah, I've had that happen. Not quite that bad. I pulled up to a trailhead after a blizzard, and there's 2 bulls up on the ridge not very far away. I'm waiting for my buddy. I'm waiting. Usually I leave somebody at this point. But I think he'd shot one out. So I'm like, well, I want him to get in on it. So he finally pulls up, turns his headlights off, and he had the sound thing on when you lock your door. And so when he went click to lock it, all of a sudden you hear beep, beep. And I look up, and those 2 bulls stood up, and they're on the dead run. Like, well, so much for that idea. I should have just left him. But I bet you everybody listening's got some sort of story kind of like that. But
yeah.
So Montana, April 1st, April 1st, Colorado, April 2nd. So we got 3 states that'll be coming up not too long after this podcast. You notice Colorado, you see their big change where they swap the non-resident resident allocation from 65-35 to 75-25.
Yeah, there was a bunch of proposals for Colorado right now. They're actually, its comment period is open and you can leave comments. But yeah, a lot of things are looking at getting rid of all over the counter stuff. And
the 75-25 actually passed. But that proposal they put out there, there's like, I don't know, a dozen different alternative or different proposals, each with multiple alternatives. I read a lot of that stuff. I'm like, well, anyone who didn't believe me when I've been saying, if you can, if your time and budget allows, be burning these points, because someday this stuff's all going to change and your points are going to get deflated and devalued. Go read those proposals and see if you think your points are going to be worth as much in 5 years as they are today.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's
just going to, you just think with the number, and I don't have any of the numbers for Colorado, but they're high, the number of over-the-counter, just say archery elk tags for residents and non-residents that are available. Now those over-the-counter units become a draw.
Yep.
Think about the people who are currently have points that are putting in for the draw or just building points and then going and hunting an over-the-counter unit. Now, if you want to hunt Colorado, you burn all your points, and it doesn't matter how long you've been waiting. If you want to hunt that one unit you've hunted as an over-the-counter unit every year, it becomes limited and only takes 2 points to draw, and you've built up 10 or 12 points. Now you have to decide, do I burn the points and waste them on that? Or do I hold on to them and now realize that other hunts might be more difficult to draw as well? So it'll change. I mean, we've talked about it. Once you go down that slope of points, it doesn't get better. And now you go from over the counter to a draw in a state that has points. And if you haven't been building points, you're behind the 8 ball of being able to go and hunt some of what used to be over the counter units. And there's just so much that takes place there that's going to make things more difficult, and none of it's going to be good for opportunity.
Yeah. And Marcus and I did a video, I think it rolls out next week, about a lot of this stuff of what resident population growth is causing in the West. Colorado's population, there's a couple million extra people there from just when I started hunting there. And what does that do? It creates a lot more resident demand. Look at your
because
state.
a percentage of those residents hunt.
Yeah.
And those are a draw on that availability of that resource. And it's just, if they're utilizing those resources, then who's the first one that's going to get cut out?
Non-residents, because we're not a beneficiary of the public trust of Colorado. Same as in your state of Colorado or Idaho. You guys were feeling the crunch of just, there's too much crowding here. Let's start with the non-residents. So you put us all on a regional based system. And that's what you have to do. You got to protect your residents first and be accountable to their experience and what they want out of it. And then everything else kind of falls to what's left for non-residents. And I know a lot of people listening are going to be like, wait a second, that's not fair. I get that. I understand that. You and I have the benefit of, we've either taken the pay cuts or rejected the pay raises that would come with moving, but we've decided to live in a state that has great elk hunting, in large part for the great elk hunting.
Yep.
And I know for some people, they're like, well, I can't afford to do that, or I'm not in a situation where I can do that. I get that. But you and I are also non-residents in 49 other states.
Yeah.
So
and we're not the beneficiaries in those states, and whatever their resource is, it's going to be protected and served to them as residents first. And if it's not, then that's something they have to take up with their state. But in all the Western states, you can see the writing on the wall that non-resident opportunity is dwindling because resident opportunity, resident demand is increasing. So they've got to increase opportunity to take care of the residents. And by so doing, the person who gets left holding the short end of that stick is the non-resident.
Yeah. And for most species, not quite as much for elk, but mule deer, pronghorn, wild sheep, in my 30-some years of applying in multiple states, the size of the herds across the West are going down and down and down. Elk is still holding its own. So the pie has gotten smaller. The resident population has grown rapidly. And that's the unfortunate outcome. So as I told Marcus, you know what? If we could double the amount of critters out there on the landscape, I bet you most of this debate would go away.
We'd have to.
Yeah. So I'm not foolish enough to think that tomorrow we can double the number of critters, but I'm on board of whatever it takes, whatever kind of funding, whatever kind of policy to put more critters on the landscape. Count me in. So, But what else we got? I just got done. Hey, are we going to have Dustin from Mountain Tough on the podcast someday?
Yeah, I actually just did a podcast with him that just came out yesterday.
I saw that.
And it was such a great discussion. I'd love to have him on. And
what a positive guy, huh?
Yep. Well, and he just, I think you and I both, when we're guests on other podcasts, a lot of times it comes down to a lot of the same topics we've talked about a lot of times. And Dustin dug a little deeper, and obviously with Mountain Tough, it's a lot of their platform is mental toughness, and obviously it's a fitness app that they have. So it's to get you in shape for elk season, but not just physical shape. The mental toughness that you need to stick it out and to force your body to do things sometimes that it's saying I'm too tired to do. And so we got to dig into a lot of how you build mental toughness and mental fortitude and some of that.
Yeah.
So, and it extends, and we even, took it further than just, it's not just elk hunting, that mental toughness benefits you in every aspect of life, employment, business, if you run a business, relationships, everything. Yep. So, yeah. Good discussion.
Yeah, well, they've been filming me. Don't laugh when I say this, Corey. And audience, pull off to the side of the road. I don't want you to all drive in the ditch while you're laughing over this, but they picked me to do an 8-week fitness course. Can you believe that?
And who's it targeted to?
Well, it surely isn't targeted to athletic and fit 30 and 40-year-olds.
Which I think is really cool on their part, because despite and regardless of your age, your ability, your current physical conditioning levels, they've got a program for just about anybody that's going to get you in better position to capitalize in the mountains.
Yeah. So it's called the 50 Plus program. I think it's brought to you by AARP or something. So when they were scheming it, I thought they were kidding. They invited me over. They're just across the road from us. They're like, hey, come over. We got a big idea we want to present you. I'm like, okay. I didn't know what they had in mind. They're like, since we started doing videos of you working out, the number of middle-aged, that's polite of them to say I'm still middle-aged, people who got a hold of us and said, if Newberg can do it, I want to do it. Or if he can do it, anyone can do it. A caveman can do it. So we want to do a series. It's going to be 8 weeks long, requires 40 videos of you working out. You have all kinds of ailments, just like every 59-year-old or 50-year-old or 65-year-old that we have to accommodate for. We want people to realize you can go and keep some level of fitness even in spite of all these things. I'm like, how did I get talked into this? I looked around the room and it was like they already had it laid out. And I'm like, oh, am I going to tell them no? Or, then they're going to tell everyone, well, Newberg was faking it over here. So I said, well, first of all, let's go through all my ailments, all my accommodations we got to deal with. And I think they were only aware of my claw hammer hand on my right hand here, because they tried to, can you do a pull-up? I'm like, no. So I grabbed a hold of the pull-up bar and I just fell down. I can't grip anything with my right hand. They're like, okay, we're going to have to make big accommodations for your right hand. What else you got? Well, I got a bum liver. Well, we aren't going to exercise your liver. Okay. Scratch that one off. We'll just make it work.
We're going to exercise your liver, but when you exercise, your liver gets exercised.
Yeah, I can't get rid of lactic acids very well, but oh well. And then when I was a kid, some of our listeners may have had a similar thing. There's a hip disease called Perthes, Perthes. I was on crutches all the 3rd and 4th grade with my right hip immobilized because the ball grows, but the socket doesn't. And so it just grinds in there. So they immobilize your hip. Well, you know how hard it is to be on crutches in 3rd and 4th grade? Yeah. And they said, there'll be, when you get to be an adult, there'll be consequences of that. Well, I'm one of the lucky people who's not had to have a hip surgery. My hips are great, even though I had that disease. But my right leg's a half inch shorter than my left leg. But, oh well, I'm a little bit cockeyed anyhow. So, and then they're looking at me, they're like, why can't you balance on your right foot? I'm like, well, one time I detached my posterior tibial tendon, which is the tendon that goes from the inside of the arch of your foot around the back of your ankle up to your calf. And I detached it and I waited 1.5 years to get it fixed. And so I don't have any arch in my right foot. And I have no strength in that arch. And so they're making me do all these one-leg balancing things in this course they're filming. People are going to think I'm drunk or something. I'm like, hey, I thought we were going to accommodate for this, not show the world about it. And they're like, oh, no, the way you accommodate it, you make it stronger. I'm like, great. If I fall over and get hurt here, let's just cut that piece, huh? So I don't know. By the time I got done, I think they were ready to fall asleep when I rattled off all the things that I but it's the human body, right? I'm no different than anybody else. You got your issues you deal with. Everyone listening
you've got a pretty long list of pretty major issues, though. That's
well, what's the alternative? Quit?
yeah.
But that's just how it goes. People wonder why I use trekking poles. Well, because
it's not just for the benefits of trekking pole. It's something to make sure I don't fall over. Yeah.
Yeah. If you ask me to stand on my right foot and lift my left leg up, I will fall over.
Really?
And just how life is. So I have these orthotics in my right shoe that add that half inch to my leg. They have me doing it without that. I'm like, this ain't going to work. They're like, well, we got to strengthen that up. Can you do it barefoot? I'm like, oh, come on. I may as well stand on a bed of hot coals and try to do it versus do it barefoot. So I'm sure I'm the talk of their lab over there.
I was going to say, they've got a lot to work with there.
They got a lot of work to do. They don't have much to work with, but it's a lot of fun. For me, this has been a fun. I think I'm in week 11 of doing stuff over there, or at home, or in the hotel rooms. And usually by now, with trade show season, I've gained 8 pounds, 10 pounds. I'm eating poorly. I'm feeling bad. I'm groggy. I don't have much of an energy level. And I will say that this is the best I've felt in February in 10 or 12 years.
Well, just to add to that, you've made it through 7 trade shows or something now, and you haven't got the bird flu.
No Shanghai chicken flu for me.
Your immune system is obviously working well, and because it's just, listen, you go and you meet so many people and shake hands and talk face to face. It's loud, so people have to get close to talk and to be able to hear. And with that many people, that many trade shows, you've been exposed to a lot of different strains of different illnesses and viruses here. So the fact that you haven't gotten sick just shows that what you're doing has boosted your immune system as well.
Yeah, I'm on the ice cream wagon. I haven't had ice cream since Christmas.
Wait a minute, are they forcing you to do that?
Yeah.
Wow.
They're like, you know how much, if you eat that big scoop of ice cream every night, well, mostly it's a bowl of Hershey's chocolate syrup with a dauble of ice cream.
Gotcha. Yeah.
They're like, you probably ought to stop that. Otherwise, we're going to have to work you out 3 times a day to burn those calories. All right. You're almost killing me with 1 a day. I don't need that ice cream that bad. So, but when I was over there today, I'm older than both of my coaches combined.
Wow.
Yeah. Fortunately,
2 coaches.
They got Mark and Sarah, and they were kind enough to grab Chris, one of their employees who's 53, and have him work alongside me so that if there's things we can't do because of my arm or my foot, they're like, well, Chris will demonstrate how you're supposed to do this. I'm like, great, makes me feel good. I'm standing here with my thumb in my ear, but we're having a lot of fun with it. I do hope they're correct when they say that there are a ton of people who have body and impairments or limitations or need to modify a normal workout, who they get frustrated with that and they just quit working out. And I refuse to. I mean, I know I got things wrong, but I'm not giving up. I'm too stupid or too bullheaded or whatever. So I hope they're right. And I hope when people do that or see it, like they're 50 plus. So I don't know how many 50 plus year old elk hunters are out there.
There's a handful. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So I just can't wait till this fall when I'm walking up the mountain and those camera guys stop to catch a break. I'm just going to keep right on trucking.
That's right.
See you at the top, boys.
And they'll hear your trekking poles clanking off the rocks as you just keep going right to the top.
Yeah. But the other thing they're working on is my shoulders and my back. So I'm excited to get back to shooting my bow when the snow melts.
Yeah.
See how much difference that makes.
Yeah.
I've never really focused on that. And it's not that hard to do it. These are mostly just body weight exercises that you do.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the things you can force your body to have to do. That within about 20 seconds, you're shaking and quivering.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Just holding your hands up above your head. You want to see how weak your shoulders are. And then if you put a couple pounds in each hand and do that. And the problem is, I think most of us have found ways to compensate, instead of just putting our arms straight above our head, we can, put our arms at an angle or different ways to be able to get the job done. But when you just really set it out there and find out where the weaknesses are in your muscles and everything, like you said, you don't have to go to a gym and find all these weights and plates and everything to be able to get a good workout and strengthen what needs strengthened to be a stronger elk hunter.
Yeah. Today, when they were filming me, Chris and they had us doing jumping jacks. And I got impingement in both shoulders. And when I do jumping jacks, the popping and cracking, it sounds like someone's standing there popping their knuckle. So we started laughing because we could both hear our shoulders doing that. I'm sure that I would bet any money there's people listening to this who are laughing saying, oh, yeah, it sounds like me. But so I don't know. After all that, I'll feel better, but I might not even see an elk this fall.
Yeah.
I hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's something to be said for feeling better too, and just it makes the experience better when you just aren't miserable every minute of every day, because the mountains they're going to test you. And if you haven't done your homework, it's not going to be a fun test.
Yeah. And when I look at those elk, they got 4 legs to run up that hill. I only got 2.
Yeah.
And they don't eat much ice cream as I do. So.
I'm not quite ready to go on their diet yet, but
no, you still do the ice cream, huh? Well,
no, I'm just talking about the Elk's diet, not Mountain Tough's diet.
Okay.
I've been doing a lot better. I still have weakness for sweets, and I sometimes fall off the wagon, but overall doing a lot better.
Yeah, why do you think we got so many equipment emails in the last few weeks? Everyone out buying equipment, or what's the deal?
Yeah,
all the companies having things on sale.
Yeah, I don't know about on sale, but I think it's just that time of year where we can't get out in the hills and do a whole lot. Things still snowy or muddy, and so we're stuck at home. We haven't figured out what tags we have yet, with all the application season still in front of us. So the next best thing to do is, hey, let's look at gear and see what's going to improve my chances of success this fall in the gear category.
Yeah, the one guy said, it's almost like he wrote apologetically that his bow is 7 years old. And then he said something like, I've only shot 3 elk with it. I'm like, well, why would you trade it in then? 3 out of 7. You need to, if anything, you need to bronze that thing.
As I say, it's working.
Yeah. You don't need a brand new bow. If you've killed 3 out of 7, that brand new bow is just one more tag you could maybe buy somewhere else. So
yep. Well, and that's we look at it, and I think a lot of with the marketing and everything that goes on out there, and especially in the gear world, we're continually bombarded with new this, this improvement, and I think it's really easy to get bottled down on, hey, if I get a new bow, it's going to shoot this much smoother, it's going to be this much faster, and it's going to bring me that much closer to being successful. And so we go get a new bow, and then we forget to work out. We forget to e-scout. We forget to, practice our calls, whatever it is, thinking that gear improvement is going to bridge the gap. And I think sometimes because of that, the new gear might actually be a detriment to our success because we rely on it and not on the real important things. Not saying that gear isn't important, because I like new gear as much as anybody.
Right.
But, if you can't get up the mountain to where the elk are because you're not in shape, or you can't call the elk in because you haven't learned how to call, or what calls to use, or how to speak to the elk to get them close to you, that bow is going to be all it's going to be is an anchor as you're going up the mountain out of shape. And so there's a lot that I love about gear, but I've learned a long time ago that gear is not what makes a person successful.
No, not at all. And that's where you and I are probably, if you took everyone who had podcasts and media platforms, you and I'd probably rank way down at the bottom in terms of gear hucksters or salesmen. But, oh well.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how it is. I think we both live by the motto you just said. It's not the gear. It's your knowledge and how many failures you've made that you've learned from, how much you invested before the season started.
I think our platform is success. We preach success, and other platforms might focus more on marketing than success. So that's the reason why. And I mean, gear, don't get me wrong, we've got we've got partners and sponsors and everything just like everybody else, but we know the role gear plays and where it's important. And
speaking of one of our mutual partners, Sitka, not this summer, the summer before, Trevor emails me and he's like, "Hey, did you and Marcus not submit an order this year? I'm looking at this footage and you guys are wearing the most tattered old stuff. It's like 7 years old. We haven't made that for." I'm like, "Well, it still works." They're like, "Yeah, we know that, but
we've got some new stuff out. We'd really like to get in your hands."
So I guess that's an indication of just how a little focus I put on gear. If, hey, this has been working, just like that guy with his bow, that if I had a bow that I shot 3 bulls in 7 years, there's not a chance I'd trade that thing in.
Memorialize it above the mantle, if nothing.
Yeah. Someone else had a question about minimum draw weight and arrow weight for a younger person. You got any opinions on that?
I do. Yeah. So for elk hunting especially, in Idaho, the minimum required draw weight on a bow is 40 pounds to hunt big game. And for my kiddos, I wouldn't let them hunt elk until they were at least 45 pounds, drawing 45 pounds. And, there's weight is one consideration. Proficiency is a big part of it as well. But I believe it's 5 grains per pound of arrow is minimum. So at 40 pounds, don't quote me on that. I'm not, that's not the regulation. But the more weight that you can shoot, the better. Obviously, if you're at 45 pounds and you're shooting a 450 grain arrow, that arrow's not going to be going very fast, and there's going to be other issues there. But the more weight you can get, and especially weight up front. So my kids, when they started, I put 125 grain tip on instead of 100 grain to get a little bit more weight, but also to put that weight of the arrow up front, which is going to help with momentum and help with penetration. As well as arrow flight. So
you're an engineer. Momentum and mass times velocity, correct?
Ish, yeah.
And kinetic energy is 1/2 mass times velocity squared, correct?
Yeah.
So do you think we get too worked up on kinetic energy because it squares the velocity component versus momentum where it's not squared? Or does it not matter?
Well, I think it does matter. No, I think, when you square a number, when you have mass and velocity combined and you look at the effects of both of those, for momentum, they're pretty much equal contributors to that equation.
Yeah.
And when you look at kinetic energy, it's giving a lot more preference to velocity.
Yeah.
And not as much to the weight. So that goes to the old, heavy arrow versus speed. Do you want weight or speed on an arrow? What's going to be better? I think there's a combination in there. There's a fine line or a gray area in there where you want to be. If you're too fast and your arrow's too light, you're not going to transfer enough energy when you hit the target to be able to keep that arrow going through. It's just going to expend it all. And the velocity is the big component there. You don't have weight to drive it in. On the other side, if you have too much weight, you aren't going to get enough velocity, because when you increase one, you decrease the other with an arrow. You can't, just increase one and keep the other the same without increasing your draw weight. But yeah, so I do think, for a lot of years, it was all about kinetic energy. You got to be shooting, 80 foot-pounds or whatever the equation turned out to be. And ultimately, we're finding and have found that momentum contributes probably more to true penetration in a target like an animal than kinetic energy. Now, there's, again, if you're shooting really, really high kinetic energy, it's probably because you're shooting something heavy. You're shooting a lot of draw weight, which is moving that arrow at a pretty good speed. So there's going to be, that's not saying that high kinetic energy is a bad thing, but to go just for kinetic energy and not to consider the mass of your arrow, the weight of your arrow, that's, I think that's an error when we're trying to talk about penetration. If you're shooting at a target, just target archery, a lighter arrow, higher speed, you're going to be more, there's going to be less margin of error there, and your bow's going to be able to perform a little better as far as hitting a dot at a certain distance. But when we want to penetrate and get into vitals, especially when we're talking about lower draw weight, I think velocity becomes much less of a concern, and good arrow flight and some mass on that arrow is going to be more helpful than speed of an arrow.
Yeah. No, I've kind of defaulted to that, but man, I got some people who are willing to die on the hill of kinetic energy.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, you want to shoot an elk with a 22-250 that's going at 2,200 feet per second, or do you want to shoot an elk with a 180 grain, 300 Win mag that's going at 1,800 feet a second? Right. Well, I want to shoot the 300 Win mag. Why? Well, all that kinetic energy is going to get absorbed from that 22 caliber bullet before it goes very deep into the elk. And you made my point for me. Thank you.
Yep.
One's energy, one's momentum.
Yep. So a light bullet or a light arrow at high speed has great ballistics, and it's not going to be as affected by drag, by wind. If you're having to guess distance, a bullet's not going to drop as much at 300 yards. So if you misjudge the distance by 50 yards and don't have a rangefinder and you just hold on, you might hit 4 inches low instead of 8 inches low. So there's benefits there. But when it comes to actually punching a hole in something and penetrating deeply, it's mass that's going to help you get the job done. And again, there's trade-offs. So it's not just saying, well, why don't we shoot a 500 grain slug and, call it good at that? Or why aren't we shooting 800 grain arrows? And well, it's because your arrow is going to be traveling at 150 feet per second. The elk's going to be able to see it coming and move out of the way. And if you're off by 3 yards, you're going to shoot 14 inches low instead of 4 inches low. So there's trade-offs there, but at the end of the day, I would put more emphasis on a good combination and making sure that your arrow flies good. And I think that's the biggest thing I see is we can argue about speed, we can argue about weight, but at the end of the day, if your bow's not tuned and your arrows aren't tuned to your bow and you're not proficient with it, it's really not going to matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've made a very good point there. Now we're going to get a whole bunch of emails about, no, let me tell you. And, maybe, there's always that meme of the guy sitting at the card table along a sidewalk saying, tell me or prove me I'm wrong or whatever. It's like, all right, prove me that we're wrong. So, you guys need any controlled burns in Idaho like we need in Montana?
I think there's always a need for habitat management in all the states.
Yeah, I was just I got my email here from the Elk Foundation of how much money they're putting into their partners in controlled burns. And it's a lot. It's in the millions of dollars. And they're trying to come up with habitat, and you don't got to burn it all. You can burn 100 acres, 600 acres, and benefit 2,000 acres.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of resistance against controlled burns these days, and it's unfortunate because, and I get why, if a controlled burn gets out of hand and property, or worse yet, lives are lost, I understand that. But if we suppress fire, we're making a decision. We may not view it this way, but we are making an affirmative decision as a society that we are going to reduce the productivity of the landscape by disrupting the natural fire cycle.
Yep.
So if we're going to do that, our only real option to catch up is through controlled burns. And RMEF has been funding millions and millions of dollars into controlled burns. It's one of their biggest habitat treatment projects, them and their partners. So this spring, a lot of them get done in the springtime or in the fall. If you see some smoke in the air, it's okay to look and say, well, is that a wildfire? But if it's a controlled burn, don't be complaining about it. They look like that.
It's going to be improving habitat and also reducing fuel for the uncontrolled burns that come later in the summer a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. RMEF, I was just looking at when they sent me that email. They have done, since they started in 1984, so 40 years ago, they've done 1,500 controlled burn projects, or have helped through volunteers and for funding, them and their partners, across 1.6 million acres. So that's an awful lot of habitat improvement. Between that, weed removal, all kinds of other things, now they're up to 8.9 million acres of improved habitat.
Wow.
Of which 1.6 million has been controlled burns. So
yeah.
I don't know how you, I don't know what the term is, advocate on behalf of controlled burns, but maybe that's what we have to do. Is to say, hey, I support this, because there's a lot of people where I live in Montana. There are new people who've moved here, and they don't want to see smoke in the air.
I was just going to say, logging companies, timber companies that go out and have slash piles that they burn in the spring or the fall. Every year, there are people up in arms about, air quality's going down. And, these aren't, you look at a wildfire that burns tens of thousands of acres in August. You want to talk about poor air quality.
Yeah.
We can deal with 2 weeks of light smoke that's way up high from a very minimal and controlled burn compared to what we're going to deal with in the name of habitat improvement and fire mitigation to try to prevent some of those uncontrolled wildfires.
Yeah. Well, I think the controlled burn season is going to start a little earlier this year, just because we've had such a light winter.
Yeah.
And folks, if you see it or smell it and it's not a wildfire, don't get upset. And if your neighbor's like, I didn't move here to have smoky air, tell them you'll pay for their U-Haul to move back to wherever they came from. It's like, you move to the west, you move to a fire-prone area, and you're going to whine and complain that we're trying to mitigate fire and create wildlife habitat. Just shut up. Just pack your junk and get the hell out of here.
Wow. Randy's adamant about this.
Well, and I think part of that is, Corey, you and I both coming from logging families.
Yeah.
We see, and we grew up in it, of how this landscape is either actively manipulated and managed by humans, or it's not. And if it's not, and we suppress every natural cycle that we've disrupted, if we suppress all of those, there are consequences.
Yep.
And I think you and I just knew that growing up. We saw it. We lived out, in rural towns. We lived in the woods, and we knew that, hey, if we're not going to do this, we better log it, or we better burn it, or we better do something. And
it's crazy because I fought wildfires for 3 summers during college. So that's back in the late 90s. I guess mid 90s. But it was nothing like it is now with wildfires.
Yeah.
There was logging was allowed. This was before the spotted owls and the monkey flowers and everything that started shutting down logging in the Northwest. But there was active logging. There was active participation in forest management, not just on private lands, but on public lands as well. And as that started being taken away, the increase in uncontrolled wildfires and the damage that's being done by those has, I've seen it. I've been a part of wildfire prevention and wildfire fighting back in the mid 90s to be able to see it to where it is now. It's changed. There is a lot more damage being done. There's a lot more that's out of our control because we haven't been able to take that active role in managing the habitat. That has to be done because we've encroached, like you said, we've altered all of these natural cycles just by being here and by developing. And that's right, wrong, indifferent. That's the way it is. And the same with wildlife management. Nature can't manage nature. Wolves aren't going to do the job that hunters are able to do as far as keeping stable numbers on the landscape. And everybody says, well, if we could just go back to let nature manage nature, that's great. But there's a whole bunch of us that are going to have to get out of the picture somehow. And I don't think many of us are volunteering for that. So,
well, no, but if they volunteered, I'd pay their ticket back to Europe or wherever the hell they came from. When you leave, we're just going to, smash your house down and convert it back to native grasses or shrubs or something. Be a good start on the situation. Sorry, Corey, if you can see Corey and
Randy went off there.
Corey and I can see each other on the video, even though we're only recording audio. And every once in a while, I know when Corey is like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you just said that."
You're worried about saying Shanghai chicken flu in public, and you just told everybody to go back to where they came from there.
Well, I didn't. Not everybody. The people who say, "Well, we should just let the elk and the wolves and the bobcat and the rabbit and everybody continue how they always were for 10,000 years." Well, for all but about 400 of those 10,000 years, we weren't here imposing ourselves on this landscape and these relationships. So it sounds to me like you're volunteering. Let me help you. Let's get you the hell out of here then.
I was getting ready. I focused on another part of your conversation there and was trying to save the thought for that. And then you went a different direction there. But you mentioned the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation they started 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And they've got a 40th anniversary celebration coming up here in May. I just got an email about. So
May 3rd and 4th or something like that.
Yeah,
Are you going to Missoula for that?
I don't know. I don't want to miss that. The shed season in Nevada opens on May 1st. So I'm thinking about going down there for that and walking around and looking at all the boot prints and four-wheeler tracks that are 2 months old because nobody else listens to the rules. But thinking about going down there and then trying to find my way up to Missoula for that celebration. I haven't seen the new headquarters or a lot of the cool stuff they have. So
there's a lot of cool stuff there. There's a big picture of Corey Jacobson when you walk in about outdoor class in his University of Elk hunting.
Oh, really? Well,
there's a little kiosk there. People can sign up for outdoor class while they're there. It's really nice the way they redid everything. The visitor center is a huge improvement. Visitation is way up. Donations from the visitation center are way up. So if you want to look at it, I guess, as return on investment.
Yeah.
Someone was doing the penciling out and they had a good idea.
Yeah.
So
are you going to go?
I've been told, since they control my calendar so much, that
you'll be there.
Or and I say that jokingly. No, I wouldn't miss it for the world. Having sat on the board for 6 years, a lot of my former board member friends will be there. There's a lot of great people, a lot of volunteers. RMEF has almost 12,000 state base volunteers now. And a lot of those key volunteers will be there. And those are the people that are so much fun to hang out with. They're just like the core of the core. If you want to paint a picture of what conservation is in America, these volunteers, and not just at RMEF, it can be any of the groups. Those volunteers, they're it. And there was an article one time in the Wall Street Journal. This was many years ago, like 10 years ago. It was talking about the value of volunteerism in America. And they actually touched on one of the components of volunteerism, how prevalent it is in the conservation community. And someone had done some math, and it was going to be like the amount of volunteer hours and full-time equivalents would put them up there in a Fortune 500 type environment for the amount of FTEs that get volunteered to the name of conservation every year. So I wish I would have kept that article. Now I'm like, dang it, whoever did this research, this was really cool.
Yeah.
But they're going to have their 40th birthday celebration. So
Is that open to the public?
I don't know.
I don't know if it's a volunteer night or.
I don't know if it's even open to me. I might show up and they'll be like, get your butt back to Bozeman, man. No one invited you.
It looks like on Friday, May 3rd, there's an open house at the RMEF headquarters.
Wow.
On Friday, May 3rd, and then a volunteer fun night to celebrate the volunteers that evening.
Cool.
And then the next night's the grand banquet on Saturday, May 4th. Yeah.
I might want to read that. I saw it in an email, but I'm so far behind, but I'm going to pull it up here. My wife has sorted all my emails since I've been gone. I'm looking in my high priority inbox, 1,478 emails that haven't been opened.
That's high priority ones.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I've been gone a lot, Corey.
Yeah.
But that's all right. I love doing it. I love going and hearing people tell their stories. Every place I've went, we've done some fundraisers. I met with a bunch of the Washington advocates when I was doing those shows out there. Met with a bunch of the Oregon people, the Oregon Hunters Association, the RMEF volunteers when I was doing the Oregon show. Every place I've went, I've been able to really engage with a lot of volunteers and help them raise money or whatever. And at this point in my life, I get almost as much fun doing that and hanging out with them as I do hanging out in Elk Camp.
Yeah.
And they're all wonderful people. And if you want to see me get wound up, just start hacking on a volunteer. Even with my bum arm, my bad hip, my bum liver, if you start hacking on a volunteer, I'm not going to stand quiet for very long because they're the backbone of conservation. And all of you listening who are volunteers, let me know. When I see you, I'm going to shake your hand. I'll buy you ice cream since I can't eat it. My ice cream budget is just sitting there building up. Maybe I'll convert it to a hunting budget someday, Corey.
There you go. That's what we always tell people. Give up a cup of coffee in the morning or whatever, and you'll be able to afford to go on an elk hunt at the end of the year. And maybe it's ice cream for some of us.
Yeah. Well, someone will be like, Newberg, I didn't know you could afford that. Me either, till I quit eating ice cream. Some people choose snooze, some smoke cigarettes, some drink beer, and some eat ice cream. Some drink coffee. We all got our vices, Corey. What's you don't have any vices, though. What the heck's up with you?
Oh, I've already said, I've admitted to my ice cream.
But for you, I've seen you eat ice cream. It's like a tablespoon. You almost measure it out. It melts before you get it in the bowl as you measure it out.
Not true at all.
Yeah, it is.
I've done a good job, but my wife is such a good cook, and she cooks really healthy food for the most part, but then every once in a while she'll bake a batch of oatmeal butterscotch cookies, and
So you're going to laugh at this. Another thing I've been investigating as part of this Mountain Tough thing that had me talk to Kyle, their nutritionist guy. Why did I not know the stupidity of eating all your protein in one setting in that evening versus splitting it up into 4 smaller portions?
Yep.
That should be taught like in 6th grade or 4th grade or something. So
I think just to get us to the point where we're actually, looking at and being concerned about what we're eating for, protein intake or carb intake or fat intake. And, it takes us till we're probably about 35 or 40 to get a grasp of that anyway. So then when they implement when you eat it and how much of each macro or micro you eat and when, in portions and all that, it's not simple science. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated, but the timing of when you eat and then when you work out and what you're putting in your body before, during, after, how long after, the benefits that come from each of those, there's benefits from carbs, but do they come while you're working out? Is that the time to eat carbs? Probably not. Protein, there's a benefit to having protein right after you work out so your muscles can start rebuilding, but you don't want all of it right then. And you don't want to work out and then, have an orange and an apple and then 8 hours later sit down and have a full meal of nothing but protein and then go to bed on it. It's, there's a science there for sure.
I must have thought it was an art rather than a science, because Kyle's like, you eat what, when? Oh, this is what I do every day. My wife says I'm the most boring, predictable eater in the world. Kyle was polite enough to not say, yeah, she's right. But just doing that, breaking my protein out into 4 equal doses through the day, man, it just has changed my energy level a lot. And I hate to be on one of these kicks because I'll be honest with you. If you ask the crew, did Randy ever make fun of these people who got into when they should eat and how much? Oh, he used to make fun of them all the time. He's like, those are the people who never hunt very much. They're too busy worried about if they took their proper dose of carbs and protein at 9:45 in the morning. Yeah, I used to ridicule that stuff, and now I'm like, oops, it actually matters. So, but yeah,
those people that go to a gym and work out, I can't get behind that movement at all. That's
I don't mind if they go to the gym and work out, but they're standing in front of the mirror, flexing and posing and acting like you're, muscle man, Lou Ferrigno or Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. Give me a break,
Not that I spend a lot of time in front of a mirror or anything, but it is kind of rewarding to see progress.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't own a scale, and you're never going to see a selfie of me with my shirt off.
Yeah, you don't have to take a picture of it. That's one of the people with these ice baths.
What's up with that?
People, it's healthy. There's no doubt, but I don't need to see somebody climbing in it in their underwear and sitting in the ice and posting a video of that every day. There's I don't know. But it is beneficial. There's no doubt that you're getting out of your comfort zone.
I have fallen through the ice, beaver trapping and ice fishing many times in my life, and no one ever said, "Oh, that's good for you." Tell me where that's beneficial for you.
Well, would you willingly climb into a bucket of ice water out in the freezing cold temp? Why not?
Because it's stupid. You get hurt doing that. People die doing that stuff.
Well, they don't die doing it. If you fall into the ice and can't get out, you might die from it, but it's uncomfortable. I don't like a cold shower. It's a comfort thing. But if you're able to climb into a bucket of ice water and tolerate it for 2 minutes, you're teaching your mind, hey, we can do hard things for whatever period of time. And aside from that, there are other health benefits from cardiovascular and vascular health and things like that. But at the root of it, it's just doing something that is difficult and forcing your brain to say, we can do difficult things. We can do this.
Well, I slam my head in the door every once in a while, and it reminds me I can do difficult things without even trying. Feels better when you stop.
That's not a difficult thing. That's a stupid thing. There's a difference between doing stupid things and doing difficult things.
All right. So I'm a Finlander, right? All my heritage is Finn, the home of the sauna. We do just the opposite of that, right?
Saunas are healthy too.
We go and we get some hot rocks and we pour ice or water on them with no ventilation until you just about suffocate.
Yep. There's benefits there too for opposite but similar reasons, and if you go from an ice bath into a sauna, you're getting the best of both worlds. So
I'm not buying it.
I don't do either myself, but I know there are health benefits, and I struggle jumping off of a boat in the summer into a lake that's 68 degrees temperature, let alone forcing myself to climb into a ice bath that's 39 degrees in the middle of the winter. That's I haven't got on that boat yet, and
there's a couple things you're not going to see me doing. Ice bath unless I'm out beaver trapping and I fell through, or I just wanted to get to my fishing hunting hole there and the ice was a half-inch thick and I fell through. Then I might do an ice bath. And you're not going to see me standing in front of a mirror flexing, like Pee Wee Herman or something, and taking pictures and posting it on. I wouldn't know how to post. I'd have to have my crew post it on Instagram. They'd laugh out loud at me and the white balance on my white legs. Wait till you see them filming me. They had to readjust the white balance on their cameras for my white legs. So
something is out of white balance here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the alarm's going off on the camera. Hey, readjust white balance. The auto setting isn't working here. So those are things you're probably never going to see me doing, Corey. But you're going to see me eating better. You're going to see me working out regularly. Not like killing myself, but just staying there where I need to be. So when I hear that elk bugle up the ridge, I can at least walk up there. I probably won't be able to run up there, but I won't just say, heck with him. He can stay there. That's too steep. Because I've said that a time or two.
Yeah.
Not anymore. So
that's awesome.
But what else we got? Anything else? I feel like we've really accomplished nothing with this podcast, other than I've offended half the audience.
Yeah, I don't think
maybe 2/3.
Maybe it depends on how many people have moved recently into the state they're listening to this in. But I don't think you managed to offend half of them.
Well,
our viewership should still be in double digits.
If you count family members, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, man. I don't know why anyone listens to this thing. The number of people who've come up to me at trade shows like, I love that Elk Talk podcast. You and Corey, we never know what you guys are going to talk about. And it's just like I'm sitting around a campfire with you guys. And I'm like, well, that's because we don't have much else to tell you. We're not gonna fake it and pretend like a lot of people do. So what you see is what you get.
Unfortunately, yeah, you get what you pay for here.
Yeah, and it's free, so might not even be worth that. So, and we do have a money back guarantee, folks.
Yeah,
and, if you see us and you ask for your money back, we'll give you your money back.
No questions asked.
I say that to people.
We might remind you that you didn't pay anything to listen.
Yeah. But... yeah. The number of people who look at me like, what do you mean I don't pay for that? I'm like, well, that's why I got a money back guarantee. So. I think I better let you go to basketball practice. Don't you guys have the state tournament this week?
We have the last basketball practice of the year tonight, and we leave tomorrow morning for first game of the state tournament. Play tomorrow at noon, and then win or lose, we play again Friday, and then if all goes well, we play again Saturday.
Oh,
so
cool.
Yeah.
So what's the mascot of your team?
It's the Vandals.
The Vandals, just
the
like
McCall Donnelly High School Vandals. Yeah, just like the University of Idaho Vandals.
What's the deal with all the Vandals? Is that an Idaho thing?
I don't know. I was a Viking in middle school, and then I was a maniac in high school, and then a Vandal.
Maniac?
Yeah.
Really?
A Viking, a maniac, and a Vandal.
Yeah, I was a Viking all the way through our school, the Little Fork Big Falls Vikings. And then there's a school down in southern Minnesota, Blooming Prairie, called the Awesome Blossoms. Like, what the heck kind of... I mean, what does a mascot run out there dressed like a flower or something? It's like, all right. Never saw him in the state tournament for anything.
I can imagine.
Now people from Blooming Prairie are going to be sending us email too. I think you better pull the plug on this, Corey, before I dig the hole so deep that they won't even have a rescue rope long enough to pull me out of the hole. But good luck to the Vandals.
Yeah, it'll be a good time. We're poised well. We're number 4 ranked in the state, and we've got a decent bracket, and we'll hopefully be playing the number 1 team on night number 2, and that might decide right then the easy route to the state championship games. So
cool.
Yeah,
well,
it'll be fun.
We'll wait to get a report from you.
I will report for sure, as I've got to go and finish shipping out the last batch of our Destination Elk T-shirts, and then head into practice, and be back next week with a freed up schedule. Basketball season over, so I'll have all sorts of free time.
Yeah. How much longer is Destination Elk rolling out there on your YouTube channel?
I think through the middle of March, so a couple more weeks, and we're just about sold out. We bring in a limited order of T-shirts every year, limited edition, and we sold out in like the first week, so I did a reorder of it, and I'm looking at the inventory here, and we've got very few left. We got a few smalls and mediums, but normal sizes are few and far between. So it's been good, and getting those shipped out, and Destination Elk has been going really good. We had a great 4-episode series with my son Isaac and his hunt, and then what's today? So Thursday we're kicking off the Outfitters for Hope hunt.
That's always a good one.
Yep,
that's the coolest thing I watch across any platform in every year is your hunts that you do with those special people.
Yep.
And you and so many others pitch in to make that work. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, no, it's incredible, and I'm most excited every year to be able to share that with others, not for any reason other than they get to meet another incredible youth and be in an incredible place elk hunting, and we get to spend a few days with them and their family and get to know them and their story, and then share it with everybody else. So it's a very rewarding experience for sure.
Well, keep doing it, my friend. Good luck in that basketball tournament. And folks, if you were offended by any of my humor, send your emails, address them all to Corey. Corey at nobodycares.com.
That's I think I have had a few emails go there, but that's no, send us an email, a comment at elktalkpodcast.com. Just go to the contact link there, and if you've been offended, let us know. We find humor in reading that too. So
all right. Good luck, Corey. Thanks for being here, folks.
Yep. Catch you on the next